Donald Trump has announced a new attorney general pick. The name is Pam Bondi. Bondi served as the state attorney general in Florida from 2011 to 2019. Before that, she spent more than 18 years as a prosecutor, currently a partner at a lobbying firm. Bondi has long ties with the president-elect. Back in 2016, on the eve of the Republican primary in Florida, Bondi endorsed Trump, picking him over the candidate from her own state, Senator Marco Rubio. 59-year-old later joined Trump's legal team defending the then president in his first impeachment trial. When Trump's first attorney general, Jeff Sessions, was ousted in 2018, Bondi's name was floated then as a possible replacement. In a statement announcing his new AG pick, President-elect Trump called Bondi an America First fighter, saying she will, quote, refocus the DOJ to its intended purpose of fighting crime and making America safe again.
And Willie, very interesting. Dave Ehrenberg, of course, right now, Palm Beach County's state attorney, ran against Pam Bondi in 2010 for state attorney general in Florida. And we're going to have him later on in the show to talk about the new AG pick.
Yeah, and we'll have more on who she is and what she might bring to the job if she's confirmed in just a minute. But Pam Bondi's name came about very quickly yesterday because Matt Gaetz withdrew his name from consideration for Attorney General. Gaetz explained his decision, writing on social media, "It is clear that my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition." Gaetz, of course, embroiled in his own scandals, facing allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. The former congressman denies those claims. Sources tell NBC News at least 5 Senate Republicans were planning to vote against Gaetz and had communicated to other senators and those close to Trump they are unlikely to be swayed on Gaetz. At least 20 senators were uncomfortable with having to vote for Gaetz for Attorney General. The former congressman could only afford, of course, to lose the support of 3 Republicans to be confirmed, assuming no Democrats would have voted for him. So what happened here? Joining us now, congressional reporter for The Hill, Michael Schnell, NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian as well. Good morning to you both. Michael, let me start with you and how this fell apart so quickly. We had heard privately and then publicly from some senators in the last 24 hours or so that they just couldn't get to yes on Matt Gaetz, that this was the one perhaps nominee that they were willing to take down. So how did this happen in the end, and why did he walk away?
Yeah, well, Willie, we know that, excuse me, former Congressman Matt Gaetz was on Capitol Hill 2 days ago, the day before he dropped out. He withdrew his name from consideration. And he had these meetings with senators. And senators seem to be keeping an open mind, saying that the president-elect deserved to pick who he wants in these positions and let them have their say and defend their nomination. But we were also hearing from those same senators that they wanted to see the ethics report into Matt Gaetz. They wanted to see the allegations and the information that had been gathered over roughly 3.5 years by the House Ethics Committee. Now, the panel had been debating and weighing whether or not to release that report. This week, they declined to release the report. The vote to release the report had failed. But I spoke to a source familiar with the situation who told me that members left that meeting with the understanding that the report would be, quote, ready by the time of their next meeting on December 5th, indicating that another vote could potentially happen then and a vote could be successful on releasing this report. So I think that with the skepticism among senators, having this real possibility of an ethics report coming out, whether it be through a formal vote of a committee, whether it be through a leak from the committee, or right now, there are even House Democrats who are pushing to have a floor vote on forcing this ethics committee to release its report into Matt Gaetz. There seemed to be this concern that at the end of the day, he wasn't going to be able to wrangle enough votes, that his confirmation hearing would potentially be a spectacle on the Senate side. There were some senators saying that it would be Kavanaugh on steroids, of course, referring to that that confirmation hearing for Brett Kavanaugh that grabbed a lot of headlines. So at the end of the day, it's clear that the Trump campaign, well, rather the Trump transition team and former Congressman Matt Gaetz decided that it wouldn't be worth putting him through the next few weeks of this confirmation process, having these incessant headlines. Instead, have him step aside and put somebody else up for the job.
And now questions about what happens to Matt Gaetz. Does he go back to his congressional seat? Was he promised something by President Trump to step aside, like perhaps filling the Senate seat in Florida that will be vacated by Marco Rubio? We'll see in time. So, Ken, let's look at the new choice from Donald Trump. Pam Bondi, Attorney General in the state of Florida, the first female Attorney General in that state. A defender of Donald Trump during impeachment, both as an attorney and on television. What else do we know about her and how justice is feeling about this choice?
Well, one reaction I got from inside the Justice Department last night was this is Matt Gaetz with a better legal resume. But the legal resume is significant, Willie and guys, because Pam Bondi was a career prosecutor down there in Hillsborough County for many, many years before she was elected Florida's first female attorney general. So she's prosecuted major cases, murders, death penalty cases. She understands how that works. Matt Gaetz had never really been much of a lawyer before he was elected to the Florida legislature. So that's a big difference. And, you know, she, at the same time, though, she is, you know, an extreme MAGA activist and has tainted her legal career with very strong stands in favor of some questionable things. There was a famous incident back in around 10 years ago when, if you remember, Trump University, that for-profit university that Donald Trump ran, was getting a lot of consumer complaints about being a scam, and her office was asked to join a multi-state lawsuit, and Donald Trump's foundation contributed $25,000 to her campaign, and she opted not to join that lawsuit. And his foundation was later fined for making an illegal contribution. So, look, she served her tenure, 8 years as Florida Attorney General. She later went on to be one of Donald Trump's impeachment defense lawyers in the Ukraine impeachment in 2020, made a speech on the House floor during the trial, arguing that there was a Biden corruption scandal in Ukraine and that's why that phone call was okay. And she's also raised questions about fraud in the 2020 election, which people think were baseless. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but people are breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief at the Justice Department that at least she's a real lawyer and that her deputy, Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's defense attorney, does have a lot of experience at the Justice Department and is also well regarded over there. So net, people are thinking this is a much better situation than Matt Gaetz, but she is certainly a Donald Trump loyalist who has also raised questions about weaponization at the Justice Department and may really cause some trouble over there from the perspective of some of the career folks, guys.
All right, NBC's Ken Dilanian, thanks so much. Rev, let's look at the headline. Obviously, yesterday, we had been saying on this show that it's like the old Midas commercials about when the ethics report and all the bad information came out on Matt Gaetz. You can either pay us now or you can pay us later. And the later it is, the closer it is to, the more that it's actually in the middle of the new presidency. And I think that's the last thing they obviously, they didn't want to see this scandal in the Senate probably in January and February.
Absolutely. I think it was the wise thing for the Trump people and for President-elect Trump to withdraw him now because a long-term spectacle of days and weeks would only damage them even more. Take your losses short. Let him walk away because he was never qualified. Yeah. And he could not give any reasonable argument as to why he'd be Attorney General. I talked to people that I know in Florida last night that are on the civil rights side. We have a chapter in National Action Network there. Mm-hmm. Bondi is certainly on the right, but she is one who's qualified to become Attorney General in terms of she's handled cases, she's managed offices. And yes, we can raise questions about what she did with Trump University, but there's no glaring things in terms of her values and morals. You're talking about Gaetz with underage sex. You're talking about money that has been documented that was sent around. And to put him in charge of the Justice Department made a mockery of the system. So I think it was better for Trump. Not that I'm a Trump person at all, but it was better for him and certainly better for the American public to get Gaetz off the scene as soon as possible.
Right, and one of the things that Dave Ehrenberg said was he ran against her, ran a tough campaign in 2010. He's coming on later and said right after she defeated him, she hired him and actually spoke out to Republicans who didn't like it, saying, she's good. He's good at what he does. We need him in our
Which shows
department.
maturity, which
Right.
Gates certainly
Didn't
lacks.
show, yeah.